Hi folks, Matthew here with Disaster Area Designs. Doing a quick video today to introduce our newest product. It's the DPC-8EZ Gen3. So this guy is an 8-loop effect switcher and MIDI controller. We've got our input, our tuner out, and multi-jack, loops 1 through 4, loops 5 through 8, an assignable insert, the master out, MIDI input, MIDI output, USB MIDI, and DC 9 volts. This takes 100 milliamps at 9 volts, so it'll work on any output of most power supplies. Under the hood, we've got a few dip switches here, extra controls. We have our buffer Z mode over here. This allows you to set the output impedance of the buffer. The buffer's always on, it's not bypassable, but you can use these dip switches to configure its output impedance to play nice with your other pedals. If you've got impedance sensitive fuzz pedals, wah pedals, things like that in these loops, then you can go in and change these dip switches to send it a signal that it likes better. Most fuzz faces are pretty happy at the 10K setting, just so you know. We've got an extra dip switch on the Gen 3. This is the multi-jack dip switch, and we're going to cover that here in a few minutes. Inside, it uses the same types of technology as the Gen 2, and overall the layout and form factor are the same. Just for reference, here is an 8EZ Gen 2. This one was actually in a flood. It was completely submerged in not very clean water, and it was sent back to us to repair. When we cleaned it off, we found out it actually still worked. So we sent the guy a new controller anyway, just because, but we hung on to it just to show how tough these things are. So it looks the same on the outside except for some printing, right? And it's obviously, it has a white jack here instead of a red one. So what are the differences? Well, under the hood, the Gen 3 uses a 32-bit ARM processor instead of the 8-bit AVR processor that we used on the Gen 2. So it's 3 times faster. It's a little more capable of handling certain types of information as far as the MIDI goes. One of the main things is that we've enhanced the size of the presets, so we're able to include MIDI programs in the presets. And then we've added an extra mode, which is the MIDI mode. So on the Gen 2, you have the preset mode, which is the red, yellow, and violet mode. You have the manual mode, which is blue and green, allows you to turn the loops on and off, and that's it. On the Gen 3, we've added a third mode, which is the white mode, and that's the MIDI mode, and I'll show you that here in a second. Other changes, we've changed the way the configuration works. You can still move the insert around, but you can also dim the brightness of the LEDs by yourself. There's a couple of under the hood tweaks as far as the MIDI goes. This works really well with any of our DMC Gen 3s. Here's a 3XL. Works with the 4, the 8, the 6, any of the Gen 3s, including the DPC-5 and the smart clock. This will add 8 loops to a DPC-5. So it takes it from 5 loops to 13 loops. It adds loops to any of our other controllers, and you can connect it in a couple of different ways. You can connect it with 5-pin MIDI ports, or using a multi-jack, and we'll show you that in a minute too. So we're going to show a couple of cool use cases for this, and then if you have any questions or comments, please post them below. If you have MIDI devices on your pedal board, the DPC-8EZ can control those too. The original 8EZ, what we call the Gen 2, was capable of sending MIDI program changes on a single channel, and the program changes were always fixed. In other words, when you were on preset 1, it would load up 00A on both, 00B, 01A, 01B, etc. And it required you to go into your devices and use either the Strymon editor or by hand to go in and rearrange your banks and presets so that they would match up with what you wanted to hear in what order. We've changed that in the Gen 3. We've added a new mode, so you're familiar with the red, yellow, and violet preset mode and the blue and green loop mode. We have a new mode, the white mode, which is the MIDI control mode. So in this mode, the A and B buttons control external program A. I don't know if you guys can see that. external program A, and the C and D buttons can control external program B. So you set one device to channel 1 and one device to channel 2. And now when you tap on these guys, the A and B will control the timeline or whatever device you have here, and the big sky will be controlled by the B devices with the C and D foot switches. This sends MIDI program changes from 0 to 127, so it'll work with almost every MIDI device that's available. Another cool thing you can do is you can tap this bank button, and you can see the light changes from white to blue momentarily. It's a little hard to see on my monitor here, but from white to blue, and that will send taps to one or both devices. I have this set up to just tap to the timeline. So I can just tap to this guy, it won't change the pre-delay on the big sky. If you have a device that doesn't have tap, you can disable this, or if you have a device where the tap command conflicts with something else, then you can disable this. Once you have these programs saved in, selected the way you want them, you can go to the manual mode and turn on the loops that you want, and then you can save, and you can save this to any spot you want. So there, we've got it saved, and then this will come back to panned and tanked. So you can set up to 48 presets just like this with your MIDI program changes as well as your loop settings. This is the tuner out jack. On the Gen 2, this is just a buffered output that's always on and lets you send signal to a tuner so that you can hook up your tuner all the time without any tone suck. That's great, but a lot of you have said, well, gosh, wouldn't it be great if we could do something else with that tuner jack, because I already have a volume pedal with a buffer tuner send, or I have a true bypass tuner that doesn't suck my tone. So we listened, and this is what we did. It's still a tuner out. You can use it as a tuner out all you want, but you can also pop the lid and access these dip switches. And we've turned it into a multi-jack. So if you flip the dip switches like this, which is off, on, then this acts as the multi-jack. So let's show you some cool stuff you can do with that. First up, a lot of you control your EZ with a Gen 3 controller. That's awesome. Wouldn't it be cool if you could do it with one less MIDI cable? So yeah, take a regular patch cable, this is a disaster plug cable, and plug it into your Gen 3. This is a 3XL Gen 3 in Ghost White. We've got its multi-jack set for MIDI in the system menu, and then you connect that to the multi-jack of your EZ, and now it acts like a MIDI input. So there you go. So with one cable you can connect this to your Gen 3. The MIDI outs and ins on this also still function, so you can actually use this as a second MIDI out for your Gen 3 system. So if you have a device that's what we call a dead end MIDI device that only has a MIDI out, or maybe it has a MIDI in and a MIDI out, like the line 6 pedals, something like that, you can use this as an extra MIDI out just with a 1/4-inch cable. So the multi-jack's not just MIDI input, it can also do MIDI output. In fact, you can use the tip and the ring of the multi-jack to send MIDI out to 2 separate devices if that's what you want. So we've got Chase Bliss Brothers and Spectre here. These take MIDI on a TRS cable, the ring of the TRS cable. At launch, we're going to have custom-made cables for these that allow you to hook up 1 or 2 Chase Bliss pedals along with 1 or 2 EMPRESS or Meris pedals. So if you have pedals made by those manufacturers, the EMPRESS REVERB, the ECHOSYSTEM, the TREMOLO 2 all work with this, and then the Meris Autobit and Mercury 7 will both work as well. All the Chase Bliss stuff works with this. So you set the multi-jack for double out, hook up this Y cable, and when you're in the MIDI mode you can see that we can control the A device and the B device, as well as sending taps to the B device in this case. We don't send taps to the Brothers because it doesn't have a tap tempo component. Here's a new feature that we've been asked for a lot. If you hold the B button when powering up, it'll put the unit into one of the configuration modes. In this case, it's the brightness setting. So we can go all the way down here to the normal setting, all the way up to basically writing your name with a laser on the moon. So it's pretty flexible, and once you've set it and saved it, the controller will remember that regardless of what else happens. All right, well, we've covered some of the new features and the advanced functions of the DPC-8EZ Gen3 controller. If there's anything you'd like to know more about, if there's any questions you have, please post them below in the comments. We'll try to answer them as quickly as we can. We'll have pricing and pre-order details available on our website starting next week. If you're a member of our mailing list, you'll get an email with all the details. Thanks for watching.